Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's got Star Trek. Episode 94, Lower Decks, Season 2, Episode 5, An Embarrassment of Dooplers.
Don't tell me the party was boring.
It was amazing. Non-stop sliders.
You love sliders. So, why'd you leave?
It just wasn't fun.
Not enough famous admirals?
There were, but you weren't there to make fun of them with me. I'm sorry I left for the Titan the way I did. I guess I was worried you would talk me out of it. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I didn't even know you had feelings.
Of course I do. I just don't show them to everyone. I don't know why I make an exception for you.
Maybe because you're my number one.
Ah, wow. No, if anything, you're my number one. I'm your mentor.
Nice try. We've already done that.
It goes by force of personality. Me, then you. No, don't make me bump you down to number 2. Thanks for coming to hang. I'm sorry I ruined the party.
I can replicate sliders whenever I want back on the Cerritos. Who needs to be at the coolest, most prestigious party of the year?
Do you think like an embarrassment of Dooplers, is that supposed to be like a gaggle of geese? Or a murder of crows?
Totally.
Yeah, it seems like it would be. That was interesting. There was no, is this the funny banter? What's going on?
Yeah, this was funny.
This is the podcast.
That's sufficient funny banter.
Is that sufficiently funny? Did that segue us from the clip that we just played of the episode into...
It was good funny banter.
Good funny banter.
So
well done, Dan.
There was no teaser, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, I call it a cold open. You call it a teaser.
Cold open.
What's that line? He's like, he calls it a something. I call it a sling blade. What is it?
Some people call it a sling blade. I call it a Kaiser blade.
Yeah, that's right. Some people call it a cold open.
Is that from the movie Sling Blade?
It totally is.
Where he's like eating mustard. Just
why do you call
spoonfuls
it
of mustard.
Kaiser?
It threw me off that
Biscuits
there was no cold
and
open.
mustard.
There's not a lot of Star Trek episodes. Wasn't there another? I have a recollection that there's a season 1 episode of Lower Decks that maybe didn't have a cold open either. I could be wrong.
I couldn't tell you off the
This
top
one
of my
didn't have
head.
a cold open?
This one did not have a cold open. In fact, it freaked me out. I thought at first I was like,
there was one in the first season that did not.
I was like, is Paramount Plus playing some games on me? Did I miss some really clever opening thing?
Did it skip it automatically? Did it think it was skipping the opening credits when really it skipped the opening
Where's
thing?
the opening scene?
You got to be careful with those streaming services because some of them are better than others. Some of them are good about like if there's an extra scene at the end of the credits, they'll let you keep watching. Other ones you have to like try to frantically find the keep watching credits button, which is different for everyone. Some of it's keep watching credits. The other one it's like press the back button. Some of it's this and that.
Because there's something about
and then you miss it and you go to the next one, so you go to the previous one because you want to watch it. But then by then it's restarted. It's restarted the whole episode because it thinks you're at the end, so it starts the whole thing. So you got to fast forward, and then you go fast forward to the end, and then you press the button to try to stop it. But then the thing pops up and you accidentally hit the next episode button again.
Yep.
All right, comedic banter, as usual, provided by the dependable Dan.
Different like services have different the way their menus work, and you're like you think you're working one, and it's like it's middle age. It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, they should all have press back to jump back like 5 or 10 seconds. They should all have that.
It is frustraring when they don't have that, especially if you're watching a Star Trek show that's full of hidden Easter eggs. Not even hidden, but they're just all in the background. And
Just so many, you have to just keep.
All right.
And there's a surprising amount that do that. Anyways.
So, okay.
Doopler.
First, we'll say, okay, this is the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
It's got it.
And this is
94.
episode 94. Yeah, episode 94.
Got it right this time.
And the episode being discussed this evening, or on this podcast, is An Embarrassment of Dooplers.
Dooplers.
The 5th episode of Lower Decks, 2nd season. All right, so we got that out of the way.
I kept thinking they was going to somehow be related to Dooplers or something, but it has nothing to do with Dooplers.
Well, you mean like the Doppler effect?
Yeah, something. I don't know.
The Dooplers
Like a siren?
I didn't think it actually would because that doesn't make sense.
You mean like the red shift of a galaxy?
Because they're two different words I know. So I was just like, I kept thinking, Doppler. What are they going to do with Doopler? Doppler.
Like sort of like a doppelganger. A
A Doopler ganger.
A Doopler ganger.
It's funny, they didn't say duplicate, they said duplicate.
Yeah. No, there's a whole lot in here. In fact, we'll have to make sure to save a good amount of time for our odds and ends section and talking about some of the Easter eggs and some of the funny quotes, because this episode was packed full of them, and some of them were very, very subtle. Subtle.
I'm trying to look up the name of that actor now because I'm the guy.
Richard Kind.
Oh yeah,
that's
Richard
right. That's
Kind.
what his name is.
It's,
Okay, yeah.
He was in In and Out. No, wait,
cousin
cousin
Andy from
Inside,
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Inside Out. Yeah, he's on Curb Your
Was
Enthusiasm.
he on Larry Sanders or Gary Shandling?
I don't remember. Probably both.
Well, yeah,
he's
one or both,
He's
yeah.
been around forever.
He's been
and
around
He's a
yeah.
national treasure. He's a genius. I'm so happy he started doing so much voice acting, like in that movie Inside Out.
I think he was on Spin City. With
Yes,
yeah.
And I think
he was chief of staff or
And
something.
I think he guest starred on some episodes of Scrubs. I think he was played a hypochondriac on like one of those guest patients or whatever on Scrubs. I think he was hypochondriac kind of character, which fits that whole sort of concerned, sort of worries,
by all
fits him
accounts,
well.
he's a hilarious guy in real life, and also just an odd fellow and a good guy to have as a friend. I've listened to some people speak about him on podcasts. And
Really,
things like
that's
that,
cool.
That he's one of those characters that
Said
makes
he-
your life more interesting if he's in your social circle.
It says he played Rudy Giuliani in Bombshell. I don't know. I've never heard of Bombshell.
Not familiar with that one.
I'm not
but
either.
interested. But yes, he plays Doopler. So I guess the first thing to talk about is to break it down into sort of the A plot, B plot, C plot. This episode, it was a little trickier to assign which plot is the A plot versus B plot, C plot, etc. I put that the Mariner Boimler trying to get in the party, working out their relationship, their friendship issues, probably would be the A plot.
Yeah, the Doopler thing's actually just kind of the background.
The Doopler thing is, could be, whether it's B or C plot. I put it as the B plot, and then the Tendi and Rutherford with the model being sort of the C plot.
And that's interesting because the C plot mixes with the B plot, like they work seamlessly
Yes.
together. So
the B plot is what the Doopler plot is which creates the environment that allows for the A plot to happen.
Right. So often we've said this before, like the A plot and B plot, like if they're related, they might not even really be related at all. But
Sometimes they're hilariously tonally different.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes that's my favorite Star Trek TNG episode is where the A plot is something all like somber and stuff, and the B plot is some Three Stooges shenanigans with like O'Brien or something.
And maybe if it was similar, it would be in theme or something like that. But this one was actually like they were intertwined with each other pretty. That was pretty good.
I thought so too.
It was you had the original pairings of characters come back. They've come back to hanging out as the season started out where things were changing up a little bit. You didn't have the same pairings, but you have Mariner and Boimler getting back together and
It's Lower Decks
Tendi and
classic.
Rutherford, yeah.
Well, this season seems to be a lot about strengthening relationships.
Yeah.
Mariner and Boimler especially, but also, Tendi helping Rutherford sort of come to terms with like what's gone. Because they basically don't talk too much about him losing his cybernetic implant, but it comes up and it does cause him issues.
It's come up like more in this episode where he's actually like, this is really frustrating.
Yeah, he's
it wasn't always
frustrated by it.
It wasn't as addressed so much earlier in the season.
I enjoyed the concept of Rutherford 1.0 and Rutherford 2.0 or 1.3 or whatever you want to call the current Rutherford. But because of his cybernetic implants, he's kind of thinking back to a previous version of himself that he doesn't have access to all that specific data, which is driving him a little bit nuts.
He really has this sort of obsession about closure. Like, when Shax came back and he had to, and like he just had to know what was going on with, when he had to know how Shax came back or whatever, he was like, I gotta know what the answer is. I can't know.
Shax came back the very next day. Shax came back. And they thought he was a goner.
Shax has all the lines in this episode, man.
Yeah,
Like, he has some good ones.
And there's one part where he's got this ship and he goes just like, no, I have to finish this. So like he's got this total obsession with trying to like put all the pieces together all the time, which is interesting because that does kind of play nicely with the idea that he already has this tendency to want to piece things together, and now he's having to piece together sort of his previous season.
It's great when
from his brain implant.
The writers
cybernetic.
have the character-based drama be based on the character, right? Which is not always the case in some aspects of Star Trek, where they go more for the story and then fit the character into it. And sometimes it doesn't always make sense. Lower Decks has been, I think, very good overall at having the drama stem from things that make sense from what we know about the characters in terms of their background, their characterization, as well as what we've seen them go through. I think it's true of Mariner and Boimler's situation, and to a degree, Captain Freeman's situation with the Dooplers,
Dooplers and the Dooplers.
the Dooplers and the Flooplers. And I agree with you, Dan, that this focus on the relationship. One thing that jumped out at me with the Boimler Mariner situation is it's another example of how Lower Decks is good at this slightly more realistic character portrayal despite the fact that, yes, they live in this crazy sci-fi silly world and having these crazy adventures, it makes sense that Mariner would not yet be completely resolved in terms of her conflict with Boimler. She was happy to see him. She was happy to have him back, right? So we had that part of the, when he returned to the Cerritos, that was cool. But that, unlike a classic Star Trek episode where everything is resolved at the end of the episode in most cases, you can have that resolution, but still have the hanging chad, so to speak, the hanging thread of Mariner wanting to have an apology in this case from Boimler is really kind of what she was going at. She was glad to have him back, but she was sort of annoyed that he hadn't, on his own, figured out that she was still feeling bad about him leaving in the first place.
Yeah, there was the when they're on the spaceship, on the space station, and they're talking to, there's some, shady alien that she used to know, Malvis. And there's something about how,
So she's stranded.
Yeah,
he claims
right.
she stranded him on Ceti Alpha 4, which is much worse than Ceti Alpha 5.
Right, and then Boimler says something about getting she stranded me on Rubicon 3.
Yeah, Rubicon
which I
3.
think that's the one with the sexy people and the.
Yeah. I think that was the second.
So wait, now obviously we haven't met Malvis until now, but what did Boimler actually get stranded on Rubicon 3 or Axelis?
That's not something that we saw.
Is that
but
something?
That's just
Yeah,
something he said. But she's super pissed off that he said anything about.
But this is the first time
her stranding him.
Well, that's the first time. That's the first time.
Abandoning him.
Abandoning language.
That's the first time that we have been told as the audience that this happened. There was no other reference to the Rubicon 3 or Axelis.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the planet. That's the TNG episode with the sexy people and
I
the
think it might
punishment
be,
shit,
yeah.
like the Ito or whatever.
Oh, really? That was
the
that was
Wesley
Rubicon-
Crusher.
Wesley Crusher.
Death penalty.
There's an earlier Lower Decks episode where Mariner talks about the sexy people in the rompers or something. It's
Yeah.
from last season.
They do have some good costumes
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and so she's all like, screw you. That doesn't matter. You abandoned me or whatever. So that's how that whole how that whole thing came up, is because everyone is just kind of like, yeah, she does that, doesn't she? And then she somehow gets offended. It's like, I'm not just stranding you guys are stranding me too, and so,
Right.
but then she puts on such an air like she's
Which
nothing
one?
hurts her.
Where was Khan? Was he on 5 or 4?
I think he was on Ceti Alpha 5.
Right. Okay.
Ceti Alpha 6 exploded.
Okay. It was,
I forget the rest of the
so
line.
that was 6.
Calls her Becky Mariner.
I love that. There's a lot in just this these few scenes here that all run together real quick. First, that he refers to her as Becky Mariner. She gets referred to it as Becky Mariner twice in this episode. So clearly that's sort of the name that she was going by, or that people were calling her at the time. They talk about Starbase 25 being an old starbase and lived in, and it looks like it. I mean, Lower Decks is amazing at adding this flavor to the Star Trek universe that you get a lot in Star Wars, but Star Trek has rarely pulled off well. Probably the best is Deep Space Nine, but here, all the different stores. There's
Some
a
of
bunch
that stuff looked like it was from The Expanse.
Yeah, it is kind of expansy.
It's like, look, they got a quarks,
Yeah. There's also that subtle comment by Mariner where she makes a reference to station security being known to be corrupt.
Yeah, right. I was thinking about that too. Yeah.
And it's cool because, on the one hand, it's like, okay, they're just, it goes by so quick. I didn't even think about it the first time I watched the episode. But the second time I watched the episode, I'm thinking that's, I don't know if it's laying groundwork for anything, but it is expanding the world, adding some realism to the world that obviously in some of these, even in Federation Starfleet, which we're always told is so perfect and everyone behaves perfectly, even though they obviously don't. It's humans. It's more human.
Right.
Even though I know
We're seeing more grittiness to the Star Trek universe in the newer Star Trek, especially Discovery, some Picard. There was always the hint of grittiness, but it was never.
It was often outside of the Federation.
It wasn't all that gritty. And you got more grittiness in Star Wars, and so it's getting more.
Deep Space Nine
Star
was
Wars
the
style
grittiness.
That's
where you
right.
started.
That was the gritty. And that wasn't even that gritty.
Yeah.
So what was interesting about that, because there has been corruption in Star Trek before, but this was just kind of like an accepted kind of like,
An
although this is
everyday
just
kinda-
yeah, it's like that's the deal with this place. In Star Trek, if there's corruption, it's the focus of the episode and it gets resolved.
And it's the admirals and it's alien
It's
worms. And
not
Just
just
get
some-
off with a warning and a Thai iced tea.
It's not yeah, it's right. It's not some, but it's not some sort of casual sort of not casual is the wrong word, but systematic sort of problems in. that just kind of people have come to accept. So this was just a big old starbase, I guess. Like, is this supposed to?
It was one of them big ones.
Is this supposed to? Because we never really. I mean, we have been inside star bases before, but we don't ever go to the commercial side of the star base.
It's always the ship perspective, and you see the dry dock. We do see
in Discovery, we see it when they go to the future.
In Star Trek 3, there's the bar that McCoy goes because he's trying to hire that alien dude. And that alien dude with like the fish gill things poking off his head.
That's a silly bar.
I always love that scene because the guy comes in and McCoy's sitting at the table and the guy they get together and the guy is all like, "To your planet, welcome." And McCoy's like, "I think that's my line."
They had that dive bar where Boimler ordered a prune juice spritz.
Yes, like Worf.
I was going to think that had to have been a reference to the Worf.
That's a double joke because one, it's a joke reference to Worf saying like he wants to be like Worf because he's drinking prune juice. But then the double joke is because it's Boimler, he can't even handle like just a straight prune juice. He has to have a spritz. He has to have a prune juice spritz with some replicated soda water in there.
Back to the part when whack with Malvis and they have like Klingon disruptors that they're transporting, and then there's of course the data.
Some of them are lores.
Yeah, some of them are lords, the ones that are all smiling.
Oh, and God bless the internet, because I saw somebody found a screen cap of that scene that is like it's only a frame or two, but if you look at the dolls in the screen cap, one of them is smiling.
Yeah,
oh no,
right. Genius. I mean, it's really well. I mean, you can see it if you're watching the episode, but it goes by super quick. You gotta be extra paying attention. To see it.
I was wondering what order they wrote that joke in, because at the end, of course, the punchline there is that they land in the water and then all this bubble bath comes out.
And by the way, the Data dolls kind of bob out of the water, similar to what he did in Insurrection when he's like, "I am also a flotation device," or whatever. And he sort of like kind of vertically bobs out of the water.
So I was wondering if they wrote it, we're like, okay, we're going to have this chase scene. It's going to end up in the water. What's something funny we can have them do in the water? And did they work backwards from there? Or did they start from like, we got to have this, I mean, it's hard to believe that they would start with, oh, we have all this Data bubble bath. How are we going to work this into, how are we going to work a Data bubble bath gag in here? Because we really need to work a Data bubble bath gag in.
I think the reverse, because the you see those like General Lee bubble bath or Jesus bubble bath. Yeah, I've seen those in stores, and it's weird. So you could imagine somebody.
They used to do Star Wars bubble bath.
Star
bubble
bath.
So the bubble bath.
There was Star Wars bubble bath when I was a kid, and it was like in C-3PO or Jabba the Hutt or some shit.
Patrick knows about the bubble bath.
So I mean, we'll have to.
They had a C-3PO one.
We'll have to reach out to Mike McMahon and ask him about the order.
Let's reach of the joke writing.
Yeah, I'm glad that's where you went, because I was worried that you might be talking about the actual the order of the words in the joke.
Oh man,
they should. And I was trying to make sense of that. I was like, what does he mean?
It's like we're gonna have to go down this rabbit hole for the next 5 minutes. Someone's gonna start yelling.
But that Malvis guy,
Malvis.
First of all, so he's a Mizarian from Mizar 2.
A Mizarian.
They've popped up a few times in Star Trek, but
look familiar, sort of.
Most specifically, we know that species from the TNG episode Allegiance, which is where Picard is replaced. He's kidnapped from the Enterprise and replaced with that clone who's all like jolly and singing sea shanties and stuff.
That's so awkward when he's in 10 Forward or whatever, like singing that song.
Everyone's like, what the fuck is wrong with the captain?
Really uncomfortable. That's like one of the most uncomfortable scenes.
And meanwhile, the real Captain Picard is trapped in a bizarre social experiment with, what is it, with like a Nausicaan, a Mizarian, and I forget the other.
There's somebody else in like a Starfleet uniform.
Yeah, she's the one that's got the breathing apparatus, I think.
Yeah, like a Benzar or something.
Benzite or Benzar. So that we've seen that character from that episode. That's where we remember them with their funny little Sydney Opera House hat. But this guy, we know he's a bad guy because he has like a pencil thin mustache and a little chin patch.
Yeah.
And it's so funny when you see that, because you kind of don't notice it at first, but then you see it and you're like, wait, what the hell? Why does this guy have this weird little sinister little pirate, 18th century pirate mustache deal going on?
So was this whole action chase sequence, could you consider it unnecessary? Because okay, the question...
No doubt. You
Yeah, well, okay.
consider it unnecessary.
Yes, okay. Maybe that was not. Maybe I didn't word that specifically enough. But yes, it's unnecessary. But it went on for a long time,
Yes.
and went on a little bit longer than I think it needed to. But at the same time, is Star Trek only about surfacing the plot? You know, are you allowed to have fun with stuff like that?
I
in
think
Star
you're
Trek,
allowed to have, and they make that
Because-
joke on a previous episode of
Yeah, they do.
Lower Decks, where they kind of say with the Titan thing, where it's like you can have both.
Yeah.
you can have both the action adventure and the cerebral stuff.
But okay, so for Nemesis, obviously, there's when Picard is on that moon racer dune buggy
driving
thing.
around in his dune buggy.
Driving around in his dune
weird,
buggy, which
yeah.
was like kind of lame, right? But then you have Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek 3, which is. It's got a good amount
Mm-hmm. Star
of
Trek
action.
Beyond.
Yeah, Star Trek Beyond. That has a good amount of action.
enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, and a lot of I think a lot of Star Trek fans are into that one. You know, there's a lot of action in that too. So I guess it's a matter of how it fits in the episode. But I don't know like how you
I think
determine
part
what
of it is
does.
the context, because I don't think it's unreasonable to think that you might have some sort of wheeled cart-like vehicle to travel around a large starbase.
Those things are big, man.
Sure, you could say maybe they should be hovering or something. I mean, you could argue one way or the other, but
No,
it-
wheels, man. Wheels is how you go.
I get aggravated by the Captain Picard driving around in an SUV on a desert planet because it sort of didn't seem to make sense.
Yeah.
that should be a hovercraft.
It's like you got a spaceship.
That should be a hovercraft.
Should you be flying around in like
Yeah.
a shuttlecraft with phasers on it? I
mean-
zapping people.
Right. This did definitely fit into the plot, at least in Lower Decks, because it might have been gone on a long time. And they didn't. I'm not saying they need to take every opportunity they can to like get Easter eggs, because you don't want to force it. But I was surprised there weren't that many Easter eggs in the.
No, but they were just
in
just
the tra-
general sort of gags.
Yeah, they were just gags like that. Like, well, I didn't really get the one where they were going through the stores. He's like, casino, barbershop, fine men's clothing. When they were like flying through, like I didn't get what was the joke there.
It was that joke. I believe I know where they got that joke from.
It was just kind of wacky.
I know where they got that joke from. I like the joke. I think the problem is that they didn't quite go all the way to make it easier to connect the joke to the origin of the joke. So my hypothesis of the origin of that joke, and I think there's
Your
a
hypothesis.
strong argument here.
Theses.
It was a Blues Brothers joke. Because in Blues Brothers, they're driving around in the mall and they're all like Pier 1 imports. It was like, oh, the new Oldsmobiles are in early this year. I think it was that kind. It was a sort of a reference on that. But the problem, partly what I enjoyed the scene fine. Yes, it might have gone on a little long, but it didn't do the full Blues Brothers 20 cop cars, total shenanigans.
I've only seen Blues Brothers once, and that scene with all the cop cars piling on top of each other.
Towards the end?
It's burned into my brain.
That
forever.
movie held the record for destroying the most cars in a single film, I think, until Blues Brothers 2000.
Oh man,
Which you don't need to watch that movie.
I like the bit with the birds in the tree. And,
Yes.
and that because that's like some kind of classic bit that you see in like Looney Tunes cartoons
It
or
was.
something, or like it's like just an old school like bit.
The whole sequence, because Dan, you mentioned that there weren't any Easter eggs. I don't think it was that there are no Easter eggs, but they were. They were a different style.
I would say there was. They didn't. There wasn't.
it was
weren't
more
Star
like-
Trek Easter eggs.
No, it was like there was like the fish people, right?
What was funny
or
about
they
the-
drive by like a Gorn or something like that.
Oh, yeah, there was a Gorn.
The fish people, if you listen to them, they go, "Oh, the fish people" or whatever, and their answer is, "Hey, we're not people," which is like I had to rewind that and see this.
Yeah, they say we're not people.
Because it's like, yeah, right. It's usually the old switcheroo. And there was some.
Move to the aviary, he said.
Avians.
So there was.
It'll be quiet, he said.
Let's see. What else did I see? There was. They were behind some guy in some kind of assistance chair.
Yes, that was a Captain Pike post radiation burn.
Okay.
That's just
beep,
a joke.
Beep
that,
once
like,
for yes, beep twice for no.
Right.
That's a joke they did in like Futurama.
They did that in South Park.
had a
South Park, yeah.
great version of that joke.
Yeah.
And Discovery had a version. It wasn't a joke.
Yeah,
it was just a version of that chair.
There's a foreshadowing.
And then they had just when
Vision of the future.
and another
Not a foreshadow.
sort of thing is just like backwards time. It's like what? Okay. All I could think of then was like it's turbo time.
It's turbo time.
From,
Tim Robinson, I Think You Should Leave.
Yeah.
A television program available on Netflix, at least here in the
I should
United States
watch
of
that.
America.
and look up the Z shirt skit or
I like-
commercial,
I
parody
like-
commercial on SNL Z shirt with Kevin Hart and Tim Robinson.
This is probably maybe only the second. It feels like the fifth time we've mentioned both that sketch and the tummy tuckers.
yeah.
The tummy tuckers.
The tummy
You
tuckers.
guys talk about that shit a lot.
Yeah.
All right, so y'all, that's the assignment, listeners. Go out, listen to all that stuff. But for me, the driving scene, yeah, maybe went on.
The Vulcans
long.
it was funny when the Vulcans
That
were
was
like-
great.
Oh,
There was a lot of the we're not people line was great. The Vulcans saying fascinating
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah, because it is true. There is some crucial shit
Like
that
a
goes on.
suicidal
And then,
gardener guy.
What I was going to say is, while the bubble bath is sort of the bow tie, the bow tie punchline. The real punchline for me was when that guy, the feather sweeper, I called him, because that's what he was doing. He
Oh,
was
that guy
sweeping
who
feathers
wanted to
into a
die.
pile.
Oh, that's right. He was
And he was like,
sweeping,
"This
yeah.
is how I die." And then the car flips over, and he was like, "Aw, still alive." And then he goes back to sweeping up those feathers. That had me rolling.
yeah, so they were gags for sure. They were gags, all right.
What's
They were
the
just a
deal with
different ilk.
the dress uniform? Is that
The scants.
Scant.
well, like the white uniform?
Oh yeah, that's just the awesome dress. That's
Have we seen that before?
We have in TNG in the movies, and certainly in
okay,
Nemesis.
in TNG movies.
Yeah,
okay, word.
and so that
I was gonna ask about
the white
that.
dress uniform was already established, and this is sort of an evolution of that to conform to the newer style of uniform that most of the folks are wearing in lower decks.
For some reason, I have written down scants in a bag because they said scants in a bag, and I don't know. I like the sound of that, scants in a bag.
So continuing the AA plot, they go on their little adventure, through the aviary. Lots of fun jokes along the way. They are getting sort of increasingly aggravated with each other.
They get all wet.
They get all wet. They get to the party.
Probably soapy too, I imagine.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, a little bubble bathy.
Data soap.
They get to the party, and of course, Mariner can't get in.
First, we have to mention that it's great. Like they're looking for the where the party is, and it's in Ballroom Alpha.
Yeah, that's right. She's like, that's where they have all the parties.
yeah, it's
It's
Ballroom
like, that's
Alpha.
the biggest one. I did like that Ballroom Alpha. And I like the bouncer. The bouncer character was great.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Is that a species we've seen before? Because there was the bouncer, and then there were all the servers where it seemed to be the same species.
Yeah, I
Some
don't
kind
know.
of funny beetle species.
Yeah, which was a little odd because you don't usually see like a service member species in Star Trek, which was odd. But so they have this altercation where Boimler wants to go in and Mariner's pissed off that she can't go in. And then when Boimler goes in, that's when we get to see some hilarious, brilliant stuff, at least the beginning part of the party, where he sees Captain Shelby, and Captain Shelby from like Best of Both Worlds and stuff. She wanted Riker's job because she thought Riker was going to become a captain.
Oh, that's right.
And she was really good, and Riker grew like she and Riker were always fighting, but then he grew to respect her kind of deal.
Yeah, that was a whole crazy part of that episode where they were trying to force Riker to have his own ship or something. Like we're gonna introduce this girl and she's gonna force you out.
So I guess her number one was the person with all the eyeballs.
Yes, and that is like a double, triple, sinister, super Easter egg
It's a
because
sinister Easter egg.
well, maybe not sinister. That character is based
Everything's
off of the
sinister. Easter sinister.
original prototype design for Saru from Discovery was that sort of triangle-y head with
one of
all
those
those
guys.
eyeballs. And all I read was that they opted to switch to what we now know as Saru. And I presume part of it was that head was probably really difficult to apply and uncomfortable. But the other thing is having to control all those eyeballs, whether it was digital or whatever the option, that was going to be expensive.
I was thinking like during Enterprise,
Eyeballs are hard.
when they would meticulously animate the Andorians, what's it called, antennas?
Yeah, because that was all puppets.
Antennae.
Antennae. Antennae. I always thought that was like, wow, that must have taken a lot of effort to keep those things because there wasn't just totally random movement.
I think it took like a person per one, or maybe even two people per. It was like that animatronic stuff is complicated.
Yeah, and it was they weren't moving randomly. They were reacting to like the emotions that were going on.
Like
so
when Shran got horny.
Yeah, Shran. So and then there was Captain Exley, who you would think would be the big guy with the little one on this stuff. But if you looked at the pips, the big guy had the pips. He only had 3 pips.
I saw that on the second time through. And if you look, not just the pips, because I saw on the second time through,
and it wasn't street corn.
I noticed it was normal style, and I noticed the pips, and then I noticed that he was acting more captainly. He was a little bit more like swagger, than his number one, which I guess is the guy he was sitting on. It was fantastic. So yeah, and there's more stuff in the party that once we get to the Captain Freeman story. Yeah. So Boimler, of course, almost immediately is sad because he's got no one there to enjoy this with, and again the animation,
because everybody knows everybody else there.
Yeah, and he's not part of it. And the animation's they're really good with the emotion.
Yeah,
which is because this is not there's limits to what you can do, right?
It was like that with the Mugato, when they were going roar. It was really emotive, and then even with the Mr. Doopler, that actually almost reminded me of watching those old Winnie the Pooh cartoons or something about, or some kind of old Disney cartoon or something. But it was something. It had this old school look to it when his face was all moving around, because it was super expressive.
I agree entirely, and again, this is one of those things we kind of know where this is going to go. They're gonna have a bit of an argument, and in the end, they're going to find some way to resolve it. But Mariner going to this bar, and it's this old dingy dive bar, and she's just trying to get hammered and kind of drown her sorrows. In the background, I can't even remember. I can't even list all this stuff. We'll talk a little bit about it in the odds and ends. Some of the stuff you see in the background of this bar, and what's cool about it is there's some shows where Boimler would have walked in and it would have been kind of like, okay, all right, we know the deal. Everything's cool now. But they didn't do that. They had them have the conversation, right? They talked to each other and opened up a little bit. And of course, the fact that Mariner learns this was a bar that even Kirk and Spock couldn't get into this party at one point, and they have their little Kirk plus Spock thing.
Natalie was like, that doesn't seem like Spock would carve into the bar.
But they didn't need to both carve it. Maybe
it was probably just Kirk that did that because he was drinking,
and the blonde one was doing most of the drinking, right? We
sort of funny dragon bartender.
We didn't know the context of it at the time, but this there was a screenshot or something from the season 2 trailer that showed the Kirk plus Spock thing, and of course it started one of these, the fans and sorry if you're listening, but you people who have a problem with people shipping Kirk and Spock, it's like, who gives a fuck? Let people think Kirk and Spock were having a relationship. That's awesome.
Shipping? What?
Relationshipping.
Is that a term? Shipping?
That is a term. Yeah.
Is that what people say now?
The people have been saying that for quite a while, actually. I think it started. I think that
they were on a ship together.
I think that started from
space is a cold place.
I think it started from X-Files. But it was retroactively applied to Star Trek, the term shipping. If I remember the etymology of the colloquial,
is it
term
similar
shipping.
how the word docking came into use?
All right, don't look up docking. Don't look up docking, people. Look it up. It's funny. But yes, honestly, yes, probably. It's probably similar. The other term, the one that's more closely associated with Star Trek is slash fiction. And that comes from the fact that in the 70s, after Star Trek was canceled, people were writing Kirk / Spock fiction. And then it spread out from there. But it was an early on thing where fans decided to write relationships between the characters, particularly Kirk and Spock, but others as well. Some people call it Spirk.
Spark?
Spirk is the sexy
It's like romantic relationships?
Yeah, like some very passionate.
You better believe it.
Relationships and loving and touching. And there is a segment of the fan base, and it's free to have whatever opinions you like.
It was the 70s, man.
But there are a number of people who get extremely vocally aggravated if you bring up this idea that Kirk and Spock might have been romantic. But there's no evidence of that in the on-screen, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, you're missing the point. And by the way, it's always a dude. Dude, you're missing the point. Fans we're permitted to do whatever the fuck we want, right? You can have all your debates about canon and all this other stuff. That's fine. The goal is to be entertained, to de-stress a little bit, to have some fun, to enjoy this world that's been created.
It's a fun world.
Right, because you can create your own worlds if you want. But one reason why
totally
we like watching existing entertainment because somebody else who's devoted their life to
They did all the work already.
They've done all the work, and then you can take those extra steps to make it more the way you want.
And,
it.
Totally.
and lower decks is interesting because it, like we've mentioned before, it sort of reflects upon past Star Trek things that happen, and it comes up with its own new stuff. But it also is kind of a cultural sponge for the people's interpretation of Star Trek, and that somehow makes its way into the show as well. Like maybe not as blatantly, but the idea it's you're watching it, and the creators are aware of what the audience thinks,
and they're commenting and playing with it, and even trolling a little bit. And I think that the
Post Star
and
Trek.
in that way they could get some shipping going on, but they probably wouldn't. But like to argue, it's like at that point, how do you argue with? I guess that could be a problem maybe people have with lower decks is because they don't feel it doesn't keep their worldview with in shape as much as it should.
Challenges their worldview, and the funny part
their
is
worldview of Star Trek, their Star Trek universe,
which
that
is
they've come to like.
Which is there. I think irony might apply here because Star Trek itself so often has been lauded for challenging people's worldviews, whether it's about racism or economics, capitalism, war. There are a number of topics that their stories have been told in the proper sci-fi style of shifting the frame a little bit so that you can see it better, right? Because the problem is when you're living in a culture, in a society, a certain age group, certain economic group, whatever, it can be very difficult to see things that may be negative about the world you live in, but if they are positive for you, it's not that you're like, I don't care about that. You just don't see it. And there are a number of ways to see it, but one of those ways is through fiction, and science fiction in particular has been good at this because it shifts it to the future or to another planet, and then that's enough sometimes to make you look at it with fresh eyes, and then you can maybe start making those connections to your own world when you realize, wait a second, this story sounds very familiar.
I think we sort of like morphed our definition of what the worldview is about, because I was sort of referring to the idea that people have to get used to, maybe they might not like lower decks because it's too reflective of the audience.
But what I'm saying is that Star Trek has always done that from the sci-fi, just this classic sci-fi style, and then lower decks is adding a layer in that it's doing that same stuff too, but it's also commenting on fandom.
Yeah,
it's commenting on the history of Star Trek.
It's shaking up the Star Trek.
And it's acknowledging that Star Trek does not always get it right, that it's okay to critique some of these things, and they do that sometimes with a joke, and sometimes in those subtle ways, kind of like what I was saying earlier about Mariner mentioning, like, oh yeah, everyone knows that the cops on the starbase are a little shady, because that's what Deep Space Nine did so well, which is kind of making these points that these things you kind of were the propaganda you were told about the Federation. Yeah, maybe it was true to a certain extent with Kirk and Spock and Picard and such, but there's a whole lot of people in Starfleet, and the Federation is far vaster than that. And to assume that everyone's like, oh, everything's just, my shirt is all tucked in, and I would never lie.
Yeah, I guess people just sort of like it's comforting for some people to have something that they can know that in their head they don't think is going to change. I guess.
I also think it allows for,
and that's Deep Space Nine. Now, did that not do well because
yeah.
I mean, what I'm saying is it because that it. Was it Star Trek Next Generation fans not used to this new style of stuff, or was it Star Trek fans in general, or was it just even or TNG was attracting a mainstream audience that DS9 couldn't?
There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but I do think at a fundamental level, some people, they don't necessarily enjoy having it be a little bit too much in their face. On the other hand, you can also get much better stories because obviously, when you're viewing some sort of fiction, particularly sci-fi, there's going to be suspension of disbelief. But that can only go so far. And honestly, if you think about it, like how seriously can you take sort of a character drama that takes place in a world where like everyone's like perfect and doesn't lie and is at the top of their game and is a genius level person and stuff like that? It sort of doesn't make sense almost. And Deep Space Nine capitalized on that, and Lower Decks is doing that, I think, to an even stronger degree.
Yeah, it's funny because This party is super duper exclusive. It's so exclusive that even the captain of the ship that fought alongside the Titan, they didn't reach that level of exclusivity enough. And Starfleet's supposed to be all about, the Federation is about inclusion and
That's a great point.
and bringing everyone in.
I had not even considered that. It's an excellent point where it's another hypocrisy might be too strong, but it's in that direction, right?
The bouncer was like, I forget.
Newman class and above.
Was it Newman
I
class?
Think it was Newman class.
He
or
just
something.
named some random class nobody ever heard. Newman class.
It was
Was it like Newman from Seinfeld?
Yeah.
they weren't too clear on that +1 thing, because +1 is sort of implies that it doesn't matter who they are as long as it's your
Exactly,
+1. And if you don't have, and if your +1 is of high enough rank to attend this party, wouldn't they have already been invited to the party to begin with? I don't know. It doesn't not really worth thinking too much
You
about.
found a plot hole that ruins the entire show.
Ruins the entire one. I was looking at, and I'm not going to name them because there's like way more than I thought there were, but there's a whole shit ton of Federation starship classes.
Yes. Yeah. No. There are.
Well, yeah, there's all sorts of different types of ship, and then
Defiant class, of course.
classes for that type of ship.
Huron type, Hiawatha type.
Hiawatha.
Galaxy
right.
class.
Hiawatha. That's what Jet Reno was on a Hiawatha class
was
ship,
she?
I think.
A Miranda
Maybe she was
cla-
on the Hiawatha.
Miranda class, the New Orleans class. It's a
Nolans?
frigate. It's a frigate.
That one sinks a lot.
Olympic class. So California class. What's the whole? Do they really talk much about California class before
Yes.
Lower Decks?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No, not before Lower
I think
Decks.
it's
what I
just a
mean.
lower decks. But
Is it just a Lower Decks
There's you
convention?
see a couple other ones
Yes.
in the first season at least. So
And
far.
and all their shuttlecraft are named after state parks or something in California,
Yeah.
like Sequoia Park, or maybe national parks.
So this was this
Yosemite, Sequoia.
There's a whole California vibe, and the ships are towns in California.
Well, there's a destroyer called a Centaur type. Bonaventure type.
Bonaventure.
Okay, so the California class was invented by the Lower Decks. There's a Luna class too. The Luna class is, I think, what is allowed.
It's got Star Trek classes.
Yeah, that's right. Let's list them.
Starship classes.
Let's just list starship classes
That
and
could
just,
be the 100th episode.
and just muse about them. Let's not
the Constitution class.
let's not have any information about it. Let's just muse
We'll
about
just
what
say, yeah, like
muse about what kind of fun we could have with the
I
different
like how
classes.
that one sounds.
Yeah,
Well-
I bet this class does this and that, and I bet they invented it because of this. Oh yeah, do you know that? Was that based on nothing? It just makes sense.
It's a Ticonderoga class frigate.
And that's okay. All of that's okay because fans can do whatever they want, right?
We're the fans, baby.
We're the fans. That's right.
But we
I am
do
a
like to have some
fanatic.
sense of rules, so our whole universe doesn't devolve into chaos. You know?
Yeah,
No
so,
one-
some amount of rules. Yeah, some amount of rules.
amount
All
of
right,
rules.
so to finish up the Mariner Boimler plot, I will say it was a fun plot. I was enjoying it, following along. I thought it was well presented, but it kind of shocked me, like that at the very end shot when it said Mariner plus Boimler next to Kirk plus Spock, like I like teared up at that, and I wasn't like particularly emotionally invested in this story up to that point. I was like, oh, that's cute. They're friends.
Yeah, and like when Mariner is all super vulnerable, and she's like I can't remember what the line was, but Boimler was saying something like, "You never seem like you're upset or worried," or I can't remember what the line was.
Right.
And she's like, "Well, I don't show anybody. I know," but she's like, "I show you for some reason."
Bouncers all like, I know it's hard to be vulnerable. I trust me, I know. And she's like, oh, shut up. I forget what she's like, oh, shut up or something like that.
What is it?
Well, I mean, it's a classic sort of like this one's the tough one and this one's the goofy one, and so you don't seeing their names carved on the bar. It adds a whole level of gravity.
Equalize it, and partly because they're having this conversation of who's the captain and who's the number one.
Yeah.
But it sort of equalizes them in some way. Although Mariner does put her in, they mimic the Kirk Spock thing, and it's Mariner plus Boimler. So Mariner's in the Kirk position, and Boimler's in.
Now he has to grow a beard.
That was a good joke.
Yeah, it was a good joke.
All right, so moving along to the Doopler plot. Now, this is super silly. It is a super silly plot. It's made a lot better because it's Richard Kind.
Yeah.
It's made a lot better because of Shax's. Freeman's increasing frustration with dealing with this guy and his duplicates is great. Somebody on the internet pointed out that Dooplers are kind of like sentient tribbles.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was wondering, how is their planet not overrun or completely destroyed yet?
It's a classic Star Trek thing where if you look too closely at it, it really doesn't make sense. Which is even
why
true of
didn't they already
tribbles.
know how to handle these people?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. So that's the thing. It's like, okay.
I mean, you could argue that this
it's not the Enterprise.
Maybe it's a fresher contact, and that's why they don't know as much about these people.
Yes, but at the same time, when he was splitting up, and I know this is kind of wrecking the whole joke because it's not meant to be looked at, like you said, it's not meant to be looked at this deeply. But did the Doopler man? Did he not realize that they were helping him? Like, remember when they were getting him angry to put him back together? Yes. And he was all like, well, I've never been treated like this in my entire life. You, madame, have crossed the line. I am a guest, like totally getting pissed off. Did he not realize that they were trying to help him? They must know.
That's probably how their society works. They're always like saying like, hey, watch out, motherfucker. Otherwise they're just gonna like constantly like split.
And maybe that's why they all have like poor confidence, because everyone's like talking.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Right. Just walk around and be like, you're an ugly piece of shit.
So we can assume that the Dooplers, they know that anger reverses the process. He could have told them that earlier.
I mean, that's why it's hard to say we could assume or not. I'd like to assume, but on the other hand, the plot doesn't make sense if you look too closely.
In the opening of the episode, when they're having like dinner with that guy, like it's one of those classic like big like state dinners where it looks like they're eating a bunch of crazy plants.
And it's like the hilarious centerpiece where it's like, is that food or decoration?
Right,
it's not entirely clear.
Are they eating some weird plants or is that just the centerpiece?
Doopler looks like he's eating just sticks of butter.
So I was thinking like Doopler was, because nothing could console him, right? Like he was like, oh no, you're giving me the silent treatment. That's what you
Oh no, I bumped into a toy.
I like that because that was the point where they're like, yeah, fuck it, we're just make him be embarrassed about nonsense.
He says, you're leaving because of me? He's like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear.
We're not allowed on the space station.
That was awesome.
Rutherford is great because in some ways he plays that Data role, of being
we're in the way. He was the perfect fucking actor. Richard Gunn is the perfect one to act like this neurotic, sort of insane. She's giving us the silent treatment. I'm not gonna. What is it then? You're very kind. Wait, that's what someone says when there's a reason to be embarrassed.
Yeah, there's no reason to be embarrassed. That's when.
I mean, you can see it from our reaction to it. It was obviously funny, and the plot may be, if you look at it, like we said, you look at it a little too closely, it doesn't make that much sense. But in this case, you go for the fun.
It's sort of like the exhausting opposite day situation where you say it's opposite day, and it's like it's opposite day. That means feeling bad is feeling good. Well, you wouldn't want to feel good, so you'd want to feel bad. Therefore, you should feel good, so you can feel bad. But then you know what I'm saying? Like you can go an infinite loop on The whole point of opposite days, you can say like
your mind works in a fascinating way.
It's like I think shitty things are good. It's like, well, it's opposite day, so you don't like shitty things. You're right. So in fact, I hate shitty things. I like good things. But you know what I'm saying? It gets into a whole world of nonsense. So he was doing that with he's like, oh no, the silent treatment, all that shit up. Wouldn't by now this tactic? It might be becoming hard to follow.
No, but your syntactical constructions are getting more interesting.
Wouldn't
by now. It makes sense. I know. Yeah. Please continue. I know exactly where.
That's a good point.
What you're
I sort of got lost in where I was.
It's like
what was the words that were coming out of my mouth?
You're like elevating beyond Yoda.
I'm not reorganizing my words. I'm just adding extra words to each thought.
Wouldn't by now.
So they know that getting angry puts them back together, right? So wouldn't they realize by now that if somebody's calling them names and try to piss them off, wouldn't they realize that they're trying to, make them join back up? And that would just make them embarrassed because like, oh no, they're calling me names because they want to put me together because I'm ruining the party because I'm splitting up. And then they would split up some more. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, Patrick?
Yes, I do.
So it's like the opposite day conundrum where it's like, they would know by now that you're trying to prevent them from splitting up by being mad at them. Instead of getting angry, you'd be embarrassed because it's like, oh, they have to be such a jerk to me in order to put me back together to prevent all these problems from happening. And it's just opposite day.
It was like, it wasn't the funniest thing ever, and there's like kind of a lot of holes in it, and they pulled it off because it was like they got Richard Kind to do the voice.
Yeah.
And it kind of works.
Well, it's really funny, yeah.
It's funny, but it's like it's not like the funniest thing ever. But like, they make it funny. They make it funny. They make it funny. They make it work.
And it would just be like just too exhausting to try to like approach, like to think too hard about, like Patrick, what you said. Best not to look too closely at some things.
Yeah. And sometimes because jokes are like gossamer. You don't dissect gossamer.
I've never heard that before.
It's because he just said it.
No, it's from like Seinfeld.
So I guess.
But it leads to what the reason I think it works is because it sets up jokes like your paw is so weak it disgusts me, and then Richard Kind, I forget his exact response, but it was along the Shax says that talking about his paw, and Richard Kind is like, I don't know what that is, but I don't like your tone. Zoop, and then bloops back together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good gag. I think it's worth it. I think there's no reason to like go in depth and try to explain more than you need to. I was just had to air what I was thinking while I was watching it.
It's quite all right.
And it's not a criticism. It's not a criticism.
It's okay if it's a criticism.
But no, because if they address that issue that I talked about, the joke would fall apart and it wouldn't be funny.
And that's the key where you can humor needs a little bit of leeway. Everything needs a little bit of leeway. It's the same thing and we've talked about this before, that the good writing and certainly in Star Trek, they are willing to abandon maybe something that's been set up previously, or a characterization, or that somebody's father wasn't alive, or that somebody was married. They're willing to change that if it serves the story they're trying to tell. That can become aggravating if they do it too often, and if every single episode things are kind of being portrayed a little bit differently, and then it gets a little discombobulated. So you don't want to do it too much. But certainly when it comes to setting up good humorous situations, you want them to fit within the context, follow the rules as closely as possible, but get a little bit of leeway in order to tell the joke.
What do you think would happen to the species if they found inner peace? Nothing? They would just kind of chill?
I don't know. How do they make babies? Do they have like sexual relations?
I don't know. I wasn't thinking about
Doopler
that
relations?
That far. Duplicating people. Maybe that's how they have babies, is they just duplicate.
Yeah.
There's just one Doopler.
Duplicate.
But
it's a stupid joke, but it's good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just they just all their emotions are based on either embarrassment or anger.
Yeah.
And that's the reaction that they have physical reactions to these negative emotions in such ways. So
this
maybe they would grow into a beautiful tree if they found inner peace.
That's like something that happened on Solar Opposites, a slightly different show made by similar people, including Mike McMahon. All right, so this particular plot wraps up in a fairly standard Star Trek way, which is where you have to do the opposite thing that you'd expect, and, which we've already talked about, which is not only that it's the opposite in that a Starfleet officer is not supposed to be like, you're a stupid piece of shit, you're an ugly sack of horrible crap, and then you get the opportunity in them doing the opposite. You get to see the Starfleet act in an un-Starfleet way, and it's fun.
Yeah,
the cat is like cussing.
Yes,
the cat always like cusses and
Ta'ana is
and it's
dirty.
like and
She's
it gets
a dirty
bleeped
lady.
out, and it's like one of those things where like is the joke where like she's just saying whatever and it gets bleeped out, and like you don't know what she's actually cussing, like you don't know the actual cuss word she's
It makes
using.
it sound a lot grosser.
It just
than
sounds
it might be.
yeah.
My favorite thing, given that from continuing previous conversation from earlier episodes from this season of our podcast, where we've discussed this, the use of Ta'ana, doing cat-like things. And Jesse, you mentioned last week that some people have commented that, yeah, it's funny, but if they do it too much, maybe the joke will run out. They did it again this week here again, it's subtle, where when she's hiding from the Dooplers, she's like high up on a shelf, sort of crouching like a cat.
Oh, I didn't catch
She's
that.
all like
I didn't catch
arched,
that
and
either.
she's like all high up, and she's all, she's just one of those scenes they pan by when they're showing
It's
people
not old.
dealing with it.
So that's good.
I think it's
That's
great.
good.
It hasn't gotten old
That's
yet.
good cat.
So you were talking about Dooplers and the Starfleet acting un-Starfleet-like to sort of solve the problem. If you want something else they did un-Starfleet-like is they fucking transported someone with social anxiety into a huge party.
I know, right?
And not only did they take this guy with social anxiety and just transport him in this huge party, he thought he was going somewhere quiet and peaceful. He was all ready to relax, and they did the opposite. And that's pretty fucked up, actually. That's probably...
I hadn't considered it, but it is fucked up. It's like Scotty sending the tribbles over to the Klingons.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm not offended by anything in the episode. I just want to make that clear. But if I had to pick probably the most offensive part, it might be that. But I didn't find it offensive. But if I was put against a wall and told to say name something offensive about that episode, that would come to mind.
It's going to be a new feature every week. It's putting Dan up against the wall
In a non-committal kind of way.
when when Doopler was beamed into the party, I really enjoyed how, as he was beaming in, one of the people who was near where he was beaming did that sort of like leaning, like disgusted, like, ew, what's that? Like, what's that? Sort of, like, sort of avoiding the beam, just, ew, what's that?
When I think it was when Mariner and Boimler were in the line. I think it was them. I don't think it was Captain Freeman, but there was all these like young, ensigns behind them. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
They're all looking all like
they looked all annoyed.
Yeah.
Like these people are taking too long.
Yeah. You'd think there'd be more transporter-related party crashing mishaps, though, I
know, right?
Like, if they could just do that, like, you couldn't transport yourself in because that would just be uncool.
Maybe that happens
You
more
look like
in
a
the,
fool. Why
in
didn't why don't they transport stink bombs and stuff?
Maybe it happens more in the Picard era where everybody's just kind of transporting around.
And everyone's
all over
pulling
the
pranks.
Pulling pranks.
Oh, you mean the Star Trek Picard era?
Yeah,
where
Star
they're
Trek Picard.
walking through those arches that are just instant transport.
Yeah, all that instant transport, James. You're just
Instant
walking around the Earth.
All right, how about what we're calling the C plot? Rutherford, Samanthan Rutherford, and Tendi building this model.
I like the 3 squiggly lines joke because it is a joke because in cartoons you'll often see like squiggly lines to represent text that the audience doesn't need to care about.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's
That
like
is funny.
like you think of like a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something, and there's a poster on the wall, and it'll list like the headline up there, and then
And it gets all squiggly,
It's all squiggly because
yeah.
it has to fill out the rest of the page, and so you look at that, and you're thinking, oh, he's gonna read something from there, and he's like, it's just a bunch of squiggly lines. So
Well, and you were talking, Dan, earlier about Rutherford's sort of obsession with completing things, and I thought probably, I don't want to speak for you, but I was thinking that Dan and I might be able to identify with that a little bit, where it's like, once we start something and we gotta finish it, and it's gotta be fucking perfect.
yeah, it's really stressful.
It is really stressful. So I'm watching this, and I'm like, dude,
It makes it hard to start things because like
that's exactly what happens. You end up procrastinating because, like, I'm not going to do it until I can do it perfect.
Yeah.
Do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It's a helpful mantra. Rutherford should learn that. But watching this, I identified with that. I kind of understood where he was coming from, particularly from being somebody who I've made models before and stuff. And, you're just like, you get obsessed with it. And it's Rutherford and Tendi. In this case, Tendi's sort of almost inadvertently helping him work through, because it's not like she's being as aggressive as sometimes she can be, but her just being there and talking, because the ultimate resolution of this story is that Tendi reminds him, she's saying, oh, we never finished it because we use this as, she talks about how to keep other people away so they wouldn't bother them. But what she's really saying is this was an excuse for us to hang out.
Right.
And so we didn't want to finish it because if we finished it, then maybe we wouldn't have that excuse to hang out anymore.
Right. And is that when he goes, that's when he says, I wasn't smarter than me, which is like another, Rutherford always has these like some confusingly sensible shit that he says, like with the brains in the skin, like he was saying, brains are inside of our skins. That was like the last week's episode. So he's always saying something kind of tweaks my brain a little bit.
It goes back to the thing where Rutherford is flipping out about something, and then at the end of the story, Tendi's like, no, it's okay. Like, we're just hanging out. Everything's cool. Like she reminds him of something. There was a thing where like he was trying to like switch his like occupation.
That's right.
So he could have more time to hang out. And she's like, no, it's cool. I'll just look at it on my pad.
The whole like finding excuses to hang out thing is,
or like he couldn't remember, like at the end of the last season, like where he lost his implant and like and then he got a new one and he can't remember stuff, and she's like, okay, well I'll just have to remind you about everything.
He was all felt like insecure because like he was a year behind being her friend compared to his old me. So
and they repeatedly go to that the tendency for Rutherford to think of things in very sort of quantitative terms, measurable quantitative terms, and I'm sure that's something they will play with a little bit more, in that he's human, but he has these cybernetic implants, which who knows how much they affect his personality, because we didn't know him before that personality. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if we see a flashback episode or something at some point where maybe we get a little bit insight into what the difference may or may not be in terms of how much of this analytical personality of his is influenced by his cybernetic implants, or if that's just kind of who he was.
He's just an ops. He's got a yellow shirt on, and he's an ops. He's a fucking weirdo.
He likes fixing the ship, you know, and that
those guys are weird.
it's funny that model that they have, for all intents and purposes, seem to be working.
Good job.
Thank you.
That was a really cool model.
It was like it would like at one part it was awesome when it started flying away and he like jumps up to catch it. It's almost like it's like something like a cat flies when he's like, get back here, you know? And it's like
okay.
and it starts like and it does like the nacelles do the rainbowy blurry shit because it's all but it's all small, so it's kind of going slow, but he just I don't know,
like
something about
shoots and like
something about that whole scene of him catching it, like it was just really awesome.
Quick note on that scene, because we're now on Zinti watch, because now we've seen the Zinti a few times. Those are the other species of cat alien. And we see it. We see that guy again. I think it's the same one in that scene where he's trying to catch the ship as it's flying away. He kind of like bumps into the Zinti guy. And I don't know, are they just playing with the flavor? Having reusing background models showing that there's these crew that hang out in the ship, or are they slowly introducing us to a future episode that will, as I predicted, might have some conflict between Ta'ana, the Cation, and the Zinti characters, because there's some in TAS in the animated series way back when there's some history of conflict between the two.
Well, you were right about the Shax thing. So
Man, I'll be right about this. Well, we don't know. People listening in the future will be like, these guys don't know shit. They don't know shit. What is wrong with them? In 2381, this is precisely what happened on this podcast. All right, so
odds and ends.
Almost.
Okay.
The one I just want to comment on that the whole model being functional, because to me it was like low key, both hilarious and totally logical that in the future models would be essentially fully functional.
yeah,
Right? It sort of makes sense. That in the 24th century,
Why not?
You're going to build like actual
like if you build
models.
an X-wing, it's like actually like an X-wing.
I mean, it actually had a little warp core, and now can we?
One of the funniest jokes was the high-pitched voice of the computer.
Oh yeah, right, yeah,
Like, to the warp core.
Now, was that an actual tiny warp core, or do you think it was just a fun explodey thing? Well, actually,
I think it might have been a tiny little warp
that thing
core.
could fly and it could shoot lasers, so it could probably go into warp if it could
At
hold
least
its
that
structure
little-
together.
And they talked about it having shields too.
Yeah.
It was enough to blow that little like hatch open.
The only thing is that, and there's a name for this, I forget what it is, but when you're building a model and you know how there's all the plastic pieces inside that you know
The box.
You know how there's these sheets? You know, you have those sheets
those
of
and you have
things.
to
sheets
pull-
of
you have to
plastic.
bend them out.
Bend them out. There's a name for that. Anyways, that's look like what they were doing to build that
Yeah.
model, implying that it's plastic. But when he dropped that after the Dooplers are chasing him, it like fell under the shuttle. It like clanked. It went
Yes.
like dunk dunk
Yes.
dunk, and it was like, whoa, plastic doesn't sound like
Sort
this.
of titanium. So the
no,
last
maybe-
thing I wanted to mention about that storyline, great, is a little.
And it's funny that they would even have that because you could just replicate like all the parts. You
but
wouldn't.
exactly, yeah, you're right. You could.
You wouldn't need to have that. In a
But then
plastic
you
thing.
wouldn't get to have one of the most fun low key background jokes, which is they get out a couple great jokes
Space
here.
Nine.
They get out the Deep Space Nine model because they realize they're like, we can finish this model, we can start a new model.
It's got an Esri and a Jidzi.
So they get the Deep Space Nine model. Tendi gets excited. It's like, oh, I got a Jadzia and Esri, which is a funny if somber joke to a degree. But the better joke in that scene is if you look at the box. Do you know who makes the models they're building?
No.
Quark. They're Quark brand.
Quark brand.
models.
Wow.
It said Quark on that little diagonal strip. It's a different
tight.
color, and that's a joke that they're building up. We already knew there were multiple Quark franchises. We learned that in Star Trek Picard.
Quark is legit.
Quark is selling all sorts of stuff here, and I expect we're going to see even more.
And it seems like a quality model he's selling, so it's not like he sold them a piece of shit that was just to make some quick profit.
And it makes that, even though we didn't question it before and had no reason to question it in the previous episode, Mugato Gumato, when they say like, don't you know Quark, and that Ferengi is like, of course I know Quark.
Quark. Of course I know Quark.
Because he sells everything. He sells probably the whips they were using, and the cages, the cage mechanisms were probably Quark brand cage mechanisms.
But you don't want to work for that guy.
Yeah.
Man.
All right. So let's move along home to odds and ends, because we got a few things to go through.
There's a
here.
couple things like Shax has some cool lines where like early in the episode where he talks about the party being awesome and like Admiral so-and-so, like he gets so drunk that he commandeers like some kind of cruiser and he makes it halfway to the Delta Quadrant. Like that was hilarious.
And another line that I again, a lot of great lines in here. I did like the I'm still alive line. That's my favorite probably. But close second is when Freeman gets the party, right? Because that's the one part we neglected to talk about is that Freeman finally gets the party and they don't get in, and the guy, she calls out to the captain to try to say, hey, can you help get me in? And he ignores her and he's like, Okona.
Yeah, Okona.
And she's like, wait, Okona's here? He's not even Starfleet. This is outrageous.
He's the DJ.
He's the DJ.
And you see him like he's like up in the DJ.
And the best part is Okona's holding that like weird contraption as he's being a DJ, and he's holding that in the TNG episode when they beam him over. He's got the exact same thing just on his shoulder. And this is many years later, and he's still rocking it. The only difference is he's got an eye patch. So I guess either that's an affectation or maybe something happened to his eye because he didn't have an eye patch in the TNG episode.
Yeah, you just kind of want him to.
But that Okona, I mean, it was the verbal Okona joke and then the visual Okona joke.
The other Shax line I like is when he's like crowd surfing on the Doopler. He's like, the crowd has me.
Yeah, that's right. He's like
crowd surfing. The crowd has me. Because he's all like the tough guy, and he says these funny things. Like that's his deal. Like he's like the crowd has me.
When Rutherford was talking about the model, he talked about the harmonic dampeners. So once again,
very good.
A long-running conversation on the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
So the question:
damper versus dampener.
So we know harmonic. It's a harmonic dampener. There's no such thing as a harmonic damper.
I'll tell you that Okona fellow. He's quite the dampener. This is my understanding.
Oh, Garros.
It's a sex.
Garros. I said Garros. I was trying to say one word. Then I said
it gross. It was a gross.
I said Garros. Wait. But I was going to say. So there was the harmonic dampener, and the argument that we all argued about last week is Rutherford last week said that they have a signal dampener. So far they've said a harmonic dampener, they've said a signal dampener. They have not said harmonic damper, they have not said signal damper, but they have said inertial dampener and inertial damper.
All right, so we're keeping track of this for you, the fans.
Very interesting.
We're doing this for you.
As a service to the fans.
Set us straight.
Set us Alfie straight.
Yeah, that's a Star Trek joke.
Yeah.
SETI Alpha 5.
What else is there?
So like the cat, part of the cat's gag to Anna's gag is that she's cussing a lot, and it gets bleeped out. And then like she says something at the end about like Admiral Verma. I let Admiral Verma put a bleep up my bleep.
I was like, I really want to know what she was talking about.
Just like, what the fuck was that?
That if you notice that dive bar on the front, it said free shots and beers. Like, what's the catch? Why are you having free shots and beers at a bar?
I think that's a joke about
what
how
business model
the Federation works because there's no
money.
Yeah, that's totally funny. Yeah, I totally didn't get that. I'm an idiot. I'm a fucking idiot.
Man, this guy's so dumb.
Man. But then there's the other thing they had there at that place is they were eating kebabs from Mr. Krata Leg. So Krata is apparently some kind of Klingon monster that you eat their legs, I think. Really?
I have no knowledge of what that is. I was just delighted that the street meat vendor, the street meat merchant, was a Gorn. And he was just all like doing some chef stuff behind there. And they kept, your focus is on the crew that you're looking at. But if you look in the background, the Gorn is all like just cooking away.
Well, it says in Memory Alpha, the Krata, whatever. Let's say the Krata because it sounds like Prada. The Krata was an animal that originated from Klingon space. Its legs were eaten as food. The Klingon restaurant on Deep Space Nine served Krata legs broiled. So, anyways, and there's more about it, but it said reading the sign. Did anyone try to read the sign because it looked like it said Mr. Krata? And then it said leg. It just seemed like a really weirdly...
I didn't. You've given me yet another excuse to go back and watch the episode yet again.
It wasn't like Mr. Krata's legs. It was just Mr. Krata leg. It was weird.
Mr. Krata leg.
It was weird.
That's what they got there. They got leg.
Yeah, it's just I think the sign was worded.
You want some leg?
No, I know what they have. I'm just saying the sign was worded weirdly.
It's okay. It's okay. You don't got to split in half. No, you'd be coming together.
Why you think I would do such a thing? Do I remind you of that character? Oh I'm causing problems.
There are a bunch of Lurians. The Lurians are the species that Morn is from Deep Space Nine, and this is an example of where they've changed things up a bit, because in Deep Space Nine, in the episode "Who Mourns for Morn," we are told, or at least we're led to believe, that the reason why Morn is essentially bald and just has fuzzy stuff, a little bit of fuzzy stuff on his head, is due to the fact that he has all that liquid latinum in his belly. Because I think Quark makes some comment about how back in the day he used to have this like long flowing hair or something, and that was a joke in that episode. But in Discovery, and now in
Liquid latinum.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, you got to. We'll have to add it to the list. Who Mourns for Morn is a fantastic episode.
Yeah.
I should watch.
I don't want to give away the plot if you haven't seen it or don't recall it, but that plays into it that he had consumed some liquid latinum, and that had negatively affected his hair growth or whatever. But since
Do they have
then,
one of those like addictions where you have to like eat like Tide tablets or whatever?
no, that's just teenagers. Teenagers do that silly stuff. But we have since seen in Discovery
Teenagers.
and in Lower Decks that we've seen a number of Lurians, but they're all bald. They all look like Morn, and we see one in the background of the bar that Mariner and Boimler go to. He's all passed out on a table in the background, but we see a few others milling about. So there are a number of them there, but they're all bald. So just a minor observation.
Minor Snorpsonation. You know, at the beginning I was thinking, it's really stressful. It looked really stressful for the crew to try to not stress out the Doopler at the beginning.
And they
They
comment
were
on that.
really-
Ransom comments on how this was the most stressful week.
It's just so funny because, like, in order not to stress someone out, you're putting them out so much. Like, I don't want you to stress me. Like, don't stress me out or I'll freak out. And if I only knew how stressful that was for you,
And I suspect-
would extra freak
Just
out.
like drops a fork or something. And everybody's like, oh.
I suspect a lot of people in our audience have had that experience where you have to walk on eggshells around somebody. So that was again a relatable experience people could have, where they can identify with these poor crew members having to put up with this guy who's by all accounts nice. It's just that he has this slight problem that you can't get anything slightly embarrassing.
Yeah, he's totally neurotic. There was something about a recon converter from a two-lock shifter. I looked that up. I think that was a Lower Decks thing. I think they were just like, they weren't even trying. I think the joke there was that we're just gonna say whatever we want.
Well, they were just trying to get that guy back together again.
Is it which guy? Oh, the
That was
Doopler
what
dude?
the engineer guy was saying about.
And when the
Forget his name.
when the Cerritos fought alongside the Titan for the Battle of Kala, like that's not something we heard about before now.
I think that's with the Pakleds.
I think that may be with the
when they were dealing with
Pakleds.
the Pakleds.
like when there was that Packlet thing and Riker was going all like happy psychotic on like because he just loved battle that much and then
previously in last season, at the end of the last season, when the whole Pakled business was introduced,
Right.
the Cerritos was doing a lot of the heavy lifting until the Titan showed up and cleaned up a little bit.
yeah, I need to rewatch the first season.
You
worth
should,
it.
dude.
Yeah.
I did it myself.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
In the bar, there's either a model or a miniature version of the Guardian of Forever behind like in front of the mirror behind the bar, like behind the bartender. There's also what appears to be a model of Zephyrin Cochrane ship from First Contact.
It's like
Oh,
they just
yeah.
have those like in bars. And like maybe it was like the jukebox or something. It was just
When they were talking to that guy that I guess he was an admiral or something, saying like, first of all. Okay, so the admiral's like, you can't come here until all your
that
guy
guy's
an admiral? He was a
No, he was a
captain.
captain. I think he was the captain who's in charge of the starbase.
Yeah, okay, so he was like, you can't come here until all the Dooplers are back in order. Okay, first of all, they could. What was he saying? You can't come to the party? Like
He wasn't going to let the ship dock.
he wasn't gonna he just wasn't gonna let him dock. Okay. Anyways, that guy had a bunch of like old plane stuff, biplanes and big planes and small planes and plane planes. But then it also had some guy holding a big pencil, and that was just confusing because it was all just like your normal like, oh, this guy's really into aviation, and then there's some dude holding a pencil.
That's got to be a reference to something.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't catch that either.
yeah. It's
Right into feedback
Weird.
at StarTrek.com if you have any idea what the guy holding the pencil represents.
Scants on a plane.
Scants.
Maybe that's why I like Scants in a bag because it reminded me of Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why I liked it.
Similar
I saw that movie. It was
Motherfucking snakes on a motherfucking
It wasn't that good.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's better like when you're like
Just thinking
You
about
just
the title.
think about it.
Just
yeah.
think about the
Which do you think's better to think about, that or human centipede?
human centipede.
Snakes on a plane.
Snakes on the plane is probably more pleasant to think about.
Yeah, much more.
Because you're just thinking about it like there's some snakes, and people are like, "Oh shit, there's some snakes." You're not
But there's so
thinking
much more to think about with a
not
human
like a-
centipede.
Yes, but
What about a centaur manapede?
although in general, as I've suggested, I enjoy being challenged as an audience member. There may be limits to how challenged I'm willing to be for any given amount of time.
Yeah.
Any other odds and ends?
Well, no, we can challenge our listeners more.
Yes, we should challenge our listeners. Yeah, definitely contact us and let us know if there's anything we missed. We certainly missed a lot of the Easter eggs because
Do you want to fight?
you can come on board. We'll Zoom you in, Skype you in, or whatever the kids use these days.
Whatever they say.
Send us a TikTok, and you can fight with us.
So now that they have a DS9 model, they should finish the Cerritos one finally, right?
I think they lost it.
Did they lose the Cerritos model? I thought they saved it. Or
They blew up the warp core.
Yeah, they had to blow up the warp
They could just start over again. Yeah.
5 minutes to a warp core breach.
I was just thinking because they always started over as part of their thing. Now they have a new thing, the DS9. So I was just
Which is
maybe-
presumably a much larger and intricate model.
I like the idea that they introduced their own little scene into the
Yes.
Cerritos with Boimler and
The
Mariner.
Mariner's all like drinking.
Yeah.
And that view point into the model ship with the little model Mariner and Boimler closely mimics one of the closing shots of last week's episode, where you see a view of the bar area from outside the ship. It's framed in a similar way and all that. Fun times with
Star Trek,
consistent storytelling and character building and animation.
I don't know why the opening theme always reminds me of the Orville's opening theme.
Yes,
Did we have this discussion before?
we have, and so has the internet.
We
Okay.
have discussed the Orville a lot.
Because when it goes like dur, 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 or whatever in the lower decks.
He's like, oh, or whatever, and he got it perfect.
No, I mean,
That's pretty much how it goes, dude.
in lower decks. Oh, whatever. I'm terrible. I'm just bad at stuff, guys. I'm sorry if you didn't recognize it. It's my fault.
You have the best pitch out of all three of
You
them.
do. You have very good pitch.
Thank you. I do what I can. But then it sounds like it's going to go into the Orville where it's like dun, 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 dun. That one is I'm getting a little less right. It's like dun, 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 so that would be like them mixing together. It's like I used to always mix up the theme song to Full House and Family Matters together. It would be like
Didn't they come on like at the,
Whoa,
the same?
don't get too personal.
I
here,
kept-
Dave.
Didn't Family Matters come on after Full House? It was like the same. It was the same night or something.
it was the TGI.
TGIF.
It was the
Yeah.
same show.
It was the same show.
It's a little known Hollywood secret. It's like how they reuse animation in Disney films. You know, you got like the Jungle Book and the Aristocats or something like that. It's the same thing.
I would-
Family Matters and Full House, identical
I
show.
would
Did I do that?
See, I would think sing the Family Matter stuff, and then it would always go back. Whenever I hit the chorus, it always went back to the Full House chorus. So, which was like, everywhere you look, everywhere is a heart, there's a heart, a heap of dumps, no,
Yeah.
and then it's like,
Oh,
the
yeah,
Family
dude.
Matters is like, it's a rare condition that this day and age you read any good news on the newspaper page. Love and recognition, but
Okay, now
baby
do-
harder to find, and there must be some magic clue inside. Well, my pitches, I can't sing that high.
now do a different world.
Inside this gentle world, cause all I see is a totally real love bursting out of every scene. Everywhere you look, everywhere you look.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut.
I know what you're talking about.
My range is pretty terrible.
It's always done the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Because they would always come on the same night, and you would watch both of them.
Yeah, it'd be all like one long night of weird TV that somehow, for some reason, I enjoyed. I'm not going to do the different world theme.
There was nothing else
because
on.
The different. Were you saying different world?
Yes, a different world.
See, the reason I'm not going to sing that was
That came on a different night.
It was illustrated.
Thursday.
It was illustrated by me singing the Family Matters theme. Is why you may claim that I have a good pitch. My range is really awful, and I missed that note earlier. And when I was singing,
It's also quite late in the evening.
but and also like
That was a
different
better song.
and different world has the voice goes.
Yes.
There's a huge range on
Yes,
that.
I
There's
know.
no way I could hit those notes.
That was like a real singer
Yes,
singing.
that was actually very good.
Yeah.
It was a much better song.
Well, I would say the Alf cartoon had the cartoon Alf has a really good opening theme song.
Willie.
Yeah.
It's all like,
Are you going to do an Alf impression?
Hey, do you remember the?
hey, Willie, hey, Willie, where's the cat?
Can you got any cat?
You got any cat?
Do you, can you do the Heathcliff? Do you remember?
Heathcliff, no one would.
I really hated that actually. It was a real lazy.
But the Alf cartoon was all like doop 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 doop. It was like that kind of song.
But the Lower Decks,
we're talking about the cartoon, not the show.
and we're also talking about Lower Decks.
Are we talking about Lower Decks?
In Lower Decks, I always liked the theme song, but I'm finding I'm humming it more than I used to. When it first came out, it wasn't like I wasn't like humming it. Whereas the Discovery theme song, I kind of got like I really like that. I like that right away. But Lower Decks, I enjoyed it right away. But now, and I agreed with you. I agree with you. There's some overlap and similarity to the Orville theme song, which is fine. But now I'm like walking around the house like all jauntily humming some Lower Decks theme song. So
I think I was watching something on Star Trek fandom or whatever, and it was something about how the Enterprise theme song, like everyone makes fun of it, but at the end of like at a convention, at the end of a night of drinking, like that's what everyone would start singing when they were all drunk. They would just start singing the Enterprise theme song.
I've had this discussion on Twitter a lot. There's a lot of people who, when they first get into Enterprise, and the great thing about Star Trek is there's always people getting into a show, right? For people who have not seen the show, even whether it's TNG, TOS, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, whatever.
I'm getting into Voyager.
Yeah, and Voyager is an example. But Enterprise, you see people getting into the show, but when they're first getting into the show, they complain about the theme song, and justifiably, right? It is in some ways a problematic theme song. But I and other people usually chime in to say, here's what happens. What happens is you start watching Enterprise and you're super aggravated by the theme song.
Yeah.
But like towards the end, you're not skipping it.
Yeah, right.
You start, it starts to grow on you, and not in like in a good way necessarily.
Remind you where you are.
It's
I'm gonna skip it.
See, eventually you'll get to the point where you won't. I bet you will. You'll be like, you know what? It has been a long road.
That's impossible.
It has been a long road getting from there to here.
Well, of course it has, but I don't need a song about it.
It's interesting that Star Trek made such a hard comeback. Like, it ended with the Enterprise, and then we got, some J.J. Abrams movies, and then Discovery came along, and then there was Picard, but now it's like, it's a whole the franchise is
Picard, Strange New World.
It's a strange new world, man.
Yeah, the franchise is
the short treks.
The franchise is exploding, and I guess that would just be to fill out because Paramount wants their own streaming channel.
Yeah.
And one way they found out you do that is you get these brands and you build a whole universe around them, because the whole universe, like the Marvel universe, and
it's I think in a lot of ways
King Kong Godzilla universe that America has.
It's
right
modeling.
now.
It's modeling the Marvel universe, and this is not a point I came up with. I've read this in a few spots, but I tend to agree with it, that they're modeling Marvel's cinematic universe, but they're only modeling it and adjusting it. And they're adjusting it in ways that, DC tried to do something similar, didn't work out. The Universal monster thing,
that
failed after like one movie.
Yeah, after the Mummy. That sucks, because that sounded like it could have been interesting.
The King Kong and Godzilla stuff has been somewhat more successful, but not, it hasn't made trillions of dollars.
I like the latest Suicide Squad movie. I thought that was good.
I enjoyed that as well, but clearly something's not working.
I thought it was
them.
better than the Black Widow.
And partly there's a haphazardness there, but what they're doing here in Star Trek, and you can of course argue and debate whether or not this is good or whether it'll be successful. I mean, we can say it's been successful thus far, but the point being that they're going for the shared universe, but instead of having everything be sort of intricately tied together and consistent, or relatively consistent, they're letting each show have really its own flavor and different target audiences, so that they're covering more bases. They're not making the world deeper for this one circle of people. They're creating all these different circles that can interact with each other.
They're hitting different target audiences. Whereas the Marvel universe, it's basically one thing guided towards one people.
Because there's like the Prodigy.
Show. And Prodigy is going to be geared more towards children.
Well, it's okay. So it's interesting that Paramount went this direction, because Star Trek, as much as I love Star Trek, it wasn't exactly popular 5 years ago. You know what I mean?
Wasn't. No,
and so it's kind of interesting that they went
back up.
They went all in on it after it sort of like no one talking about it much.
And it could be simply from a corporate perspective, they had no choice because it was the only IP they owned.
And they had to make
something worth anything.
Right.
And I think there's an argument to be made there, but it doesn't mean it's not going to work out for them, or at least in the short term. We'll see where things go, but it continues to be be interesting. If you're listening to us from 10 years in the future or 5 years from the future, you can be wryly wagging your finger at us for how wrong we were, or saying like, well, those guys are really prescient. And although we didn't make any particular predictions, I guess, but we'll continue to enjoy watching.
We're cutting edge, baby.
We enjoy. I think a point of clarification that sometimes helps some fans is you can enjoy watching Star Trek without enjoying all of Star Trek. Right? You can enjoy watching it even if there's an episode that disappoints you. You can enjoy being disappointed in an episode and critiquing why it disappoints you.
And people get like really wrapped up in this idea that like one show is going to ruin the entire universe.
Yeah.
Like it's going to ruin the entire canon. It's like there's so much at stake. Oh no, they can't get this fact like this because if they do, then the whole universe falls apart and it's destroying my childhood. And it's like, come on, man.
People like what they like. They tend to like what they grew up with. It could be that we're moving away from that somewhat because now that we're in this streaming era where you're not locked into what happens to be on the air on a given week or what they decide to rerun.
What time does this show come on?
Yeah,
I gotta watch it.
You can watch what you want, and if you want to watch the old stuff, new stuff, all of it, some of it. If you try some particular show out and it doesn't quite grab you, it's all good.
Fuck it.
Yeah,
there's other shows to watch.
Fuck it.
The only rule is that you have to like at least something of Star Trek.
Yeah,
that's the only rule.
That's the one rule. So.
That's the one rule that will be mandated.
Yep.
I'm sometimes curious of if we have any non-Star Trek fans that listen to this podcast. I can't imagine that's the case since it's geared towards not only the niche audience of Star Trek fans, but a particularly niche audience of people who've seen most of Star Trek. Is kind of what we're going for here, as well as people
that like to laugh
and people who like blue humor. Blue humor where you say shit and balls,
cocksucker.
Like
oh man,
and semen.
Oh.
Talk about semen,
motherfucker.
Yeah, so you add that in there. We have to have a certain.
I don't say those things.
Contractual thing.
I don't either.
I say fuck when I'm mad about something.
What do you think is the worst thing you've ever said on the podcast? Just sort of crudeness, curse word stuff.
I think I said cum once.
You probably said cum once.
And I look back and I was like,
But we could debate whether or not the word cum should be considered obscene to begin with.
Well, semen isn't, but like cum is kind of gross.
But
semen
why?
is what a doctor has coming out of them.
Wait, what?
I do not want to
dissect that.
I don't want to go to your doctor.
Yeah, that's bad. That's a bad scene.
I mean, it's a very contextual word,
I know. I'm not. I understand.
Stop giving me a hard time. Damn it.
Damn it, Jim. I'm a
doctor, not a bricklayer.
I was trying to think of something that was really vulgar, but
I said some things I think that I'm not going to repeat because we had to cut them out.
You said cocksucker earlier.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah,
I've said much worse things than cocksucker.
Yeah. Last week I talked about a Mugatu, like grinding on it or like tugging on his cock or something. Like
yeah, but that was sort of the precedent was set for that.
It was in
during
context.
The episode, right? Like, how are you going to talk about that scene without being crude or completely vulgar?
Exactly. When we were making a very cogent point at the time.
Yeah, right.
Cogent, intelligent point.
If we
generally do.
If we pulled any punches, we wouldn't have gotten the point across that we were trying to make.
Don't need to be pulling no punches.
No, pull them punches. Pull the thorn on your head.
Pull your punches, you can't make your point.
Pull the head thorn.
I think it's
the
just
horn.
It's a horn.
What do you call those head thorns?
Head thorn. It's called a horn.
I'm sure the etymology of the words are similar. All right, so we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up there.
Wrapping it up.
Yeah, wrap it up.
Next week we will be talking about whatever the next episode of Lower Decks is.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. We don't know what it's going to be called.
Because that gets mentioned every week.
Yes. But after we finish Lower Decks, it's going to be our 100th episode. So we're
it's good timing.
Putting together some plans for that 100th episode to celebrate a little bit. And one thing that would be great is if you want to send us in some letters to feedback@discussstartrek.com. You can send us questions. They can be questions about Star Trek, about our personal lives.
We're going to be giving away some big prizes.
Our favorite type of pickle.
What's your favorite type of pickle?
I like zesty or bread and butter.
No, only kosher dill. That's all I'll eat.
I mean, I'm good with a kosher dill, but bread and butter.
What about those pickled lemons?
It's rare.
Never heard of that.
You get those when you get like the shawarma, right?
Yeah. Sometimes. It's like Egyptian.
I've had this. The only time that I can put up with a sweet relishy type of pickle is I remember at Mario's Pizza. that you could buy their steak sub, and it would come with those kinds of sweet pickles. Those were okay.
The relishy stuff is maybe a little too sweet. I like.
Well, it's not relish. It's not
bread and butter style. Well, we can just talk about more about this in the
anyway.
100th
Point.
episode.
It's got pickles.
Point being is I don't fuck with any of those sweet pickles by choice.
You can send us questions about fried green tomatoes, the movie.
That's Patrick's thing. That's not.
I'm just saying that they can do it if they want.
The secrets and
if
the
somebody
sauce.
out there is like kind of just into it a little bit and wants
Did you ever
to
see
chat about it.
Did you ever see the Garbage Pail Kids movie?
Not the movie. I'm familiar with the
No,
Garbage
I've
Pail
seen
Kids.
Garbage Pail Kids throughout the 80s.
Anyway, you can write us.
there's a movie.
You can write us at feedback@itsgotStarTrek.com. Ask us questions about Garbage Pail Kids, fried green tomatoes,
Some kid vomits at some point.
Star Trek.
Your favorite pickle,
various
There's not
health
that many.
issues.
There's not many types of pickles. It'd be more.
gherkins.
It'd be more.
or
There are a
otherwise.
ton of pickles.
There are more. It's more
They're
interesting.
not all cucumbers, buddy.
Yeah, baby.
It's more interesting to talk about mustard though, because there's more mustards.
I'm happy to talk about mustard too. I'm telling them they can talk about whatever they can ask us whatever they want to ask us.
This
and
guy
by the way,
over-
if
this
you
guy
ask us,
over here.
if you ask us about mustard, you're gonna get a good conversation out of that. So
When I was in
write us though.
Belgium, I saw a commercial and they showed there was 4 different types of mayonnaise.
Yeah,
it was
hell
all
yeah.
different
What?
colors.
There's different kinds of mayonnaise.
Oh yeah, there's like that Japanese mayonnaise, and then there's like regular mayonnaise.
I've heard of the Japanese mayonnaise.
Those are the 2 types of mayonnaise I know
yeah.
about. So I'm interested in these other
Mayonnaise.
types.
You know what? Like I was someone I know pronounces it mayonnaise, and that's pretty common.
Yeah.
Mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Mayonnaise.
Yeah.
So
Mayonnaise.
whatever you want to ask us about, we're gonna read a bunch of. We get all these great
Some
emails,
buttons.
and we don't always get a chance to read them. But on the 100th episode, we're gonna spend some time answering your questions. So send in those emails. Feedback@itsgotStarTrek.com. If you want to follow us on social media,
Apple Podcast.
It's Got Star Trek. That's everywhere. That's Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that at It's Got Star Trek. You can find us on YouTube. A lot of people are digging the YouTube. Subscriber count is going up. You won't see video, but you'll hear audio with a nice static image. There is a growing audience who enjoys consuming the podcast that way. And finally, the website, www.itsgotstartrek.com. One cool thing about the website is you can sort the podcast episodes by series. So
I hate when there's no sorting option.
I hate when there's it is
do.
aggravating when there's no sorting option, especially in the context of something that has multiple
And the
iterations.
PlayStation Network, when you're on the console anyways, when the default sort is always like by most recently downloaded or something, I only or some other random shit on the store, I always want it to default from A to Z. That's what I want it to default to, but you can't default it to that, so it's just some kind of random ass order that
is
they
it
put
always the
shit in.
recent, or is it just the order they want to sell you it in?
That's a good question, because I think when it's your library, it's most recent, and if it's in the store, it's like what they want to sell you.
Well, you
on
can
or
write us in
something?
and
I
ask
don't
us what
know.
we think about algorithms.
Fucking capitalism.
It's just called default sorting.
Capitalistic
when you
algorithms.
go to sorting, I think it just says default, so you don't even know. Anyways,
We don't even know. So that's a pretty.
It's a trick.
you should always get to choose your sort method, and you should always be able to save your sort method.
You're getting bamboozled.
This is going to be in the next amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Is
Yep.
the right to sort.
the right to sort.
It's going to come before. Unfortunately, I think that will become before a number of other very necessary
Was
rights.
it right to fix or whatever it's called?
Yeah, the right to repair.
I don't think
Yeah,
we've got
I knew it was
much,
something much more sounded better
I
than
don't
that.
think America's got too much time left.
Yeah, probably not. So as we enjoy these waning days of the American Republic, luckily we have an international fan base, no doubt some fans of which who would welcome us into their homes when we inevitably have to flee the Mad Max wasteland that we're about to become. But in the meantime, we're doing very well.
There's always Canada.
And well, we might pull them down with us. In the meantime, we do hope you have a lovely week. And until around this time next week, we hope everything goes well, and we'll be talking more Star Trek next week. So enjoy that.
And probably a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, other stuff too. All right. Bye-bye.
Oh, still alive.